Hey people, I'm ZSH Plays, and today we're going to be building the whole of Michael Crichton's The Lost World in Jurassic World Evolution 2. Alright, so we're going to start with building the manufacturing facility where all the dinosaurs for Jurassic Park and The Lost World were made. If you've not read the Lost World novel, the island is very similar to how it is in the film. The story's quite a lot different. There's no San Diego in it. But in terms of the island and the dinosaurs, it's very similar. And most of the action in terms of InGen takes place on this big ridge at the top of the island here, where there is a huge manufacturing facility where the dinosaurs were actually grown. It's described as a massive complex in the novel. You've got the actual manufacturing facility where the dinosaurs were grown and incubated. You've got all the support buildings for the staff, science labs, garages, living quarters, all sorts of stuff. So we're going to need a whole lot of space up here to do that. So Michael Crichton describes how Malcolm and the others are driving along a road on the side of the ridge here, and they go past a couple of guard posts and then round a bend and see this enormous complex in front of them. So I'm going to put the road in and then we'll get started on all the buildings. So for the guard posts, I'm actually using the DFW toilets or restrooms. I'm putting them in backwards, and they actually look pretty good. You can't see that it's the toilets, that's all hidden on the other side of the road in the forest, and just looks like a nice little utility building. I'm going to be using a mixture of the Jurassic Park and the DFW buildings throughout this to get as much variety as possible and go for the most industrial looking buildings. This wouldn't have been as themed or as attractive as the Jurassic Park itself. This is a behind the scenes facility, so they're not going to be spending huge amounts of money making it look amazing. It's going to look functional. In the novel, this is described as having an enormous building in the middle, the size of 2 football fields, plus a huge power plant, cottages and all sorts of other stuff. We don't have any buildings that are that big in the game, so I'm going to use the DFW large hotel, which doesn't look anything like a hotel. It's a much more industrial look to it, which I think will fit really nicely with what we're trying to achieve here, and just put a load of these next to each other to simulate the sort of manufacturing building. Obviously that would need to be big if you're going to be manufacturing dinosaurs. And then just a couple more buildings, a few more decorations, and we are ready to add the first dinosaur into the park, the Carnotaur. Alright, so that's the manufacturing facility and staff centre looking pretty good. Let's move on to the next part of the island. Next up, we're going to build the high hide, where the characters watch the dinosaurs from, and this area of the river here, where the dinosaurs come to drink. So as always, lots of terrain painting around the edges of the water. I'm going to put some game trails in as well for the areas where the dinosaurs would walk down to the water. Before we get to the T-Rex, we're going to add in Maiasaur, Pachycephalosaurus, and the Gallimimus. So we're going to have a lot of dinosaurs in here. So we're just going to let nature take its course. But first we need to build the high hide itself. So there's no high hide prop in the game. So I figured that this Jurassic Park era viewing tower would be the closest match to it. So it's obviously not a permanent structure like this, but there's no way to replicate that in the game. And it does look pretty decent once it's all finished. Nearly finished putting the rocks in here. If you watch my channel, you know I'm a big fan of placing rocks everywhere. It's a really good way of making things look good and more interesting. You just cannot have enough different terrain paints, rocks, foliage, etc. when you're playing this game. And then let's take a look at the finished article. Now let's move on to the next part of the park, which is the Maiasaur Nest. So in the novel, this is the first place that the hunters come to steal eggs. which they do successfully, which gives them the false confidence to then go and try and do the same thing in the Tyrannosaur Nest, which is less successful, shall we say. I've put a load of forest in right next to the road, and I'm going to make a clearing in the middle of it, and then paint that in so that we've got somewhere for the Maiasaurs to live. So let's get the Maiasaurs into the park. These guys are so goofy looking, but I do have a soft spot for them, and they do look pretty cool walking around in their little nesting site. So let's move on now and take care of the Gallimimus field. I want to replicate the scene in Jurassic Park where Grant and the kids hide behind the giant log when the Gallimimus are flocking this way. So I just want this solitary log right in the middle of the paddock. Then I'm just going to add a bit of scrub here and there, but no big plants. And then let's get the Gallimimus in. So good to have these guys in the park after missing them in Jurassic Park. They look amazing walking through all the landscape that we've created. Just time to transport the Pachycephalosaurus, and then we'll move on to the Tyrannosaurus Nest. So we're on the opposite side of the high hide to where we just were. So I'm going to get rid of most of the grass. I want this to look like it has been well trodden and beaten down by these enormous dinosaurs. We're going to add a depression here where the nest is going to go. The events that take place here in the novel are a little different to the events in the film, but the end result is the same. A baby Tyrannosaur with a broken leg being taken back to a trailer, and lots of dead people. And I'm going to use rocks to sort of make the nest. I figure a lot of birds make nests out of pebbles, and if you're a T-Rex, then a rock is basically a pebble, right? So we're going to add 2 T-Rexes in, same as the book and the film, and then we will take a look and see what the finished article looks like. And finally, we're going to build the Velociraptor Nest. So in Michael Crichton's novel, they describe how, as the characters are chasing Arby when he's been abducted by the raptors, they drive down a river channel that's got huge boulders on either side of it, and eventually they end up in the raptor nest. So that's the area that we're working on here. Put the boulders in, and then we'll build the nest itself. So I'm going to extend the river that I made out here so that it sort of splits into 2, because I want one part of it to sort of go off into the jungle, and then the other parts to create the setting for the nest. And then I'm going to build the skeleton of an Apatosaur, which is going to be a challenge because all I've got to work with is the rocks. It's a bit larger than the Apatosaurs in the game. I moved one down here for scale, but I couldn't get one that size using these rocks. I mean, these are some pretty hefty vertebrae right here. But I've done my best and got it as close to the size of the Apatosaurs as possible. It's always fun trying to build stuff like this in the game. I don't use mods on this channel, as I've mentioned before, so it really is a challenge to try and use the limited resources we've got in the way that the game allows you to use them to try and build something cool. Obviously from super close up down on the ground, it is going to look pretty much like some rocks arranged in the shape of an Apatosaur, because that's what it is. But what I'm trying to get is so that from up above and from a distance, it really does look like an Apatosaur skeleton, because that is one of the key features of the raptor nest in the novel. So just going to put some rib bones in here and legs, etc. Just a matter of finding the right rock and then rotating, spinning, etc. until you get it to be the shape that you want above the ground to represent the different types of bones in the skeleton. So I really want it to look like it has floated down the river and then come to a rest at the end of the water. So I'm going to get rid of the water right up to the level of where the body starts. So it looks like it's come to rest there. And then we'll just add the last little bit of foliage, and that's the raptor nest done. So thank you so much for watching as always. Stick around for the cinematics. They are, I think, my favourites that I've ever made in this game. It is absolute carnage once the dinosaurs are all released. and I will see you again soon. Thanks for watching. Bye.